Okay, hi there. Hello, everybody. Again, my name is Kathleen Landy, and I'm delighted to welcome you to today's event. I am the Assistant Dean for Teaching and Learning here at QCC, and I'm just really excited, not only about the event that we're offering today, but to see so many people show up. This is really a treat. Thank you for coming. I have to say, I really tried to reflect quite a bit before writing these brief introductory remarks, and I thought about inclusivity. And what I really kept coming back to was my appreciation of just how inclusive QCC is. I think as an institution, I find this college, Queensborough Community College's dedication to inclusivity and opportunity inspiring. I think our dedication to inclusivity and diversity is not only evident in the college's strategic planning process, but also in the day-to-day efforts of so many different departments and so many different individuals. This very series, this speaker series, is a testament to the dynamic commitment on the part of our faculty. And I'd like to take a moment to thank Dr. Kat Alves, Dr. Eliza Adek, and Dr. Mirna Lekic for their leadership in coordinating this speaker series. Thank you very much. Yes. It is their commitment that is challenging this campus to move beyond abstract compassion, which is as lovely as it is essential. I'd also like to acknowledge the National Endowment for the Humanities for their vision and support of this speaker series. In keeping with the spirit of this colloquia series, part of joining the developing global conversation about inclusivity involves learning about and from organizations like the International Rescue Committee. In their own words, the International Rescue Committee responds to the world's worst humanitarian crises, helping to restore health, safety, education, economic well-being, and power to people devastated by conflict and disaster. Just 2 days ago, New York Times contributor Nicholas Kristof referred to the IRC as the gold standard of aid groups working with refugees. And it is truly inspiring to learn of the many ways in which the IRC and its partner organizations are promoting educational opportunities among the world's most vulnerable. Today, we are honored to have Ms. Sarah Rowbottom with us to speak about the IRC's work in education. In 2015, the IRC helped over 1.3 million children. 1.3 million. The IRC helped over 1.3 million children with schooling and educational opportunities, as well as over 54,000 educators with training and support. I think this is incredible and just essential. It's really inspiring. In your role, in Sarah Rowbottom's role, as the Education and Learning Manager, Sarah highlights issues relevant to educating refugees, providing information on IRC's educational programs, and discussing the IRC Refugee Youth Summer Academy, which is a 6-week program designed to transition newly arrived refugees into New York schools. Nelson Mandela reminds us that education is the most powerful weapon which can be used to change the world. And we are delighted to welcome Sarah Rowbottom here to share with us the ways in which the IRC is doing just that. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Or afternoon. I think it's afternoon by now. Sorry. Thank you so much, Dr. Landy, and thank you to the Kupferberg Center and to the organizers for having me here today. I'm really excited to speak to you about the IRC's work in New York. I feel very humbled to be introduced in the context of what IRC does globally, because I'm one person working here in New York City on the ground in a local office. But I think we're going to have a very interesting conversation. I understand we have a lot of time for questions at the end, but if you have questions as we move along, I feel fine to take those. As Dr. Landy said, I work for the IRC in New York, and I run education programs for children all the way through adults here in New York City. And I've been with the IRC now almost 9 years. As she said, the IRC really works globally, and in the U.S. we're in over 40 countries around the world and in 29 U.S. cities. We've actually expanded a bunch in the past year, I think opening at least 3 new offices in the U.S., which is pretty exciting for us. In New York City, we are actually the oldest office, and IRC was founded at the suggestion of Albert Einstein back in 1933. So we have a very long history, and New York City is the oldest office in the U.S. network and in the organization's history. We've resettled over 27,000 people in New York City since really people started keeping track. So more than that, but that's when we started counting, was in 1975. And this year we will resettle 125, we resettled 125 people in our fiscal year, which is October to September. And we'll probably resettle about the same number in the coming year. And that number may seem small in comparison to maybe the number of people resettled across the United States. As you all probably know, as I do, New York City is a really expensive place to live, so it's not really an easy place to land. And the refugee resettlement program in the U.S. requires that people who are resettled to New York City and some of the other very expensive cities in the U.S. have a local tie. They have someone here that is willing to provide some measure of support when they arrive. So that's why the number may seem small, it may seem large, it's still a lot of work. But we work with 3,000 other people and formerly resettled refugees, so people that maybe we worked with in the years prior who continue to come back for assistance, as well as asylees and other immigrants of various statuses, with a number of different services. Our office is very holistic. We provide what we call resettlement services. So for refugees who have been, chosen to come to New York, the IRC gets notification of this. The government decides who's coming, and then there are, I believe, 9 resettlement agencies that work to support those people. And so we're there in the picture to pick people up at the airport, help arrange for housing, and really meet people's very immediate basic needs upon arrival. We then work on employment services and economic empowerment, helping people to get jobs, to move, to access education that's going to help them to advance their career and hopefully be able to continue a career that they may have had in their home country. We provide education programming, which I'll talk more about. New Roots is an urban farm that we have in the Bronx. So it includes things related to food security and healthy living in New York, as well as access to professions that are related to food and agriculture. And it serves as kind of a hub for community engagement. It's not only a garden for our clients, but it's also a garden for the community around it. And we also provide a number of immigration services in our office. And today I'm going to focus on the programs that we provide for youth and helping for youth to land in New York and have an immediate source of support. And I just want to give you an idea of who I'm talking about. And I want to, well, actually, I'll back up. I want to just make the distinction for those who may not know what the difference between a refugee and an asylee is. Does anyone know the difference? Somebody knows. No? So a refugee is a person who has fled persecution, and there's a number of areas, whether it's nationality, religious affiliation, inclusion in a particular social group, that are grounds for the United Nations to give this designation as a refugee, and that's a legal status. We do use the word refugee in a more loose term for someone who has fled violence or persecution or natural disaster, but the key point is that they are outside of their country of origin. And that legal status as a refugee is granted by the United Nations once a person has applied for it and they're outside their country of origin. As an asylee is someone who has applied for asylum. They are already in a country, so they've made it to the US or another country in one way or another without having already been granted that status as a refugee before they got here. And then they say to the government wherever they are, I can't go back to where I came from. I fear for my life. I fear I'm going to be persecuted. And then they may or may not, depending on how the case proceeds, be granted asylum. So those are two differences, and they're based in the same thing. So people are achieving those statuses for the same reasons, but the process can look very different. And those are some things that we can develop a little bit more of an understanding of as we move through. But in our office in particular, we serve it's around 20% are refugees who we're resettling. Around 45 to 50% each year are people who have asylum status, or maybe their asylum is pending. In the past few years, you may be familiar with the crisis in Central America, which has driven many young people to cross the border, become apprehended at the border, and then they will end up in detention centers and then may be released to sponsors. That's who I'm referring to when I say unaccompanied minors. There are many in New York. We have just begun to work in an official capacity with unaccompanied minors who are here. So it's a smaller percentage of our population, but also growing. Many people that we work with are already citizens. Maybe we've worked with a family and they have a new baby, and 4 years later they need to go to pre-K. We help with their enrollment, or folks who have already adjusted their status before we meet them. Our ideal situation is that we meet someone upon arrival. That's the best. We can establish a basis of trust, offer a lot of different services, but that's not always the case. We may meet someone 2 years later, and it doesn't really matter. We can still provide a lot of services. Oh, this is funny what's happening with my chart. But what that's supposed to show you is just the ages. We're working with about 60% are middle school and high school students. Maybe 30% are elementary students, and then we work with students who are maybe 19, 20 who have finished high school in their home country but want to pursue higher education. So a little bit of older young adults, shall we say. And so I'm going to talk about challenges now, and what I skipped over right at the very beginning, because I write a lot of notes and then I tend to ignore them. Is that I'm going to talk about challenges that refugee youth face. And when I say refugee youth here, rather than saying refugees, asylees, and unaccompanied minors and other immigrants of other status, I'm just going to say refugees for ease. And I'm definitely going to talk about the challenges that are faced, but I'm hoping that you're going to leave here today really with an understanding of the complexity of the situation of refugee youth resettling into an urban American environment, in particular in New York City. But I'm also hoping that you're going to leave with a feeling about the possibilities and the community that we can create, an inclusive community here for young people who are new to the city and new to the country. And really their promise and their value that they add to our community. This particular quote is just one that has stuck with me really for the past year. It says, while adjusting to a new culture, it is a challenge to find balance, establish yourself, and find your true identity while keeping everyone happy. This is a quote from a young woman, a young refugee woman who actually lives in Maine, where I grew up. So maybe that's a little bit why it sticks with me, because we have a different connection. But it was at an event I was really grateful to participate in last year called the Refugee Youth Consultations. It was a US-based meeting of about 20 refugee youth from around the country who had origins from around the globe, and they were coming together to talk about what are the challenges we face, what are the impacts of these challenges, and what are the possibilities for solutions. And they were doing this in order to inform the global refugee youth consultation. So this happened in the US, but it happened in refugee camps and in countries of asylum all around the world for different groups of youth. And they were bringing these conclusions to the United Nations, an annual meeting called the NGO Consultations that was focused this past year on youth. So it was a really important space for these young people to come together and identify really their top challenges. And this was one of the quotes that she made in giving presentations, not only to the Office of Refugee Resettlement that is based in Washington, D.C., at the federal government level, but many state senators and other organizations. And I just think it illustrates for you really how complex it is, the many different challenges that can be faced, especially if you're an adolescent and you're trying to figure out who do you want to be and how am I going to get there, and really try to manage all of the pressure that you're facing from your teachers, from your friends, from your parents, etc. And so here you can see what are some of these issues. I was fortunate to accompany a student from our New York programming who's now a student at Utica College, as well as another IRC student still in high school in Atlanta. And the hexagons, right? Yeah, hexagons, that have the brownish writing in them, those are from their list of what were their top challenges. And the ones in white are more sort of my observations. And I'm going to talk about just a few of these, but if you have questions about them, you can feel free to ask. But there are many, many complex challenges that young people face in adjusting to a new environment. There are things like that are a little bit more obvious, maybe learning English, adjusting to a new culture, and logistics of like, how do you navigate New York City? It's a really big and crazy place. But then there are the things that are maybe more complicated in terms of institutional barriers. We're keeping track of what is the experience of our families as they enter the New York City public school system. And out of, I think, 41 different times that we've been to accompany a family or an individual student to enrollment, and this is for 56 different students over the past year and a half or so, 40% of them are speaking a language that's not a covered language by the New York City Department of Education. So that means that the DOE does not consistently provide any documents that are translated into their language. 50% of them are speakers of a Department of Education covered language, which means that they can get translated documents that parents can review, and there should be translators and interpreters available on a more regular basis. But the problem is that out of the times that we visited a welcome center, 65% of the time, there was no language support provided, no matter whether they spoke a language that was covered by the Department of Education or a language that was not covered by the Department of Education. And I don't know has anyone had that experience? Out of curiosity? Or been to a family welcome? You guys may be older than the existence of the family welcome centers now. They're a newer addition to the process of enrolling in school in New York City. But it's pretty staggering to know that when you and your parents walk into an institution that is supposed to be your link to education and a support for you and your family, and that they're not making an effort for you to be able to communicate with them, even though it's your right. It's a right that New York State has said is your right, New York City says it's your right, but it's not a right that is consistently upheld within our system. So this is certainly a barrier. I would feel uncomfortable going back into the school if the school was making no effort to communicate with me. And similarly, when we went to the school, 53% of the time, there was no language support provided during the actual process of enrolling students in school. And one of the things that we do is we will accompany families to the school enrollment so that we can be an advocate, help families to understand what their rights are, what their options are in terms of if their student is an English language learner, they have the right to select from a set of programs. But they're not always given the choices, and they're not always explained what those choices mean. And so part of our role is to try to advocate for that information to be provided and to try to prepare them. But this is happening when we send an advocate with families. So if a family doesn't have an advocate and maybe just does what any person would probably do is go to their nearest school and try to enroll, then you're really not guaranteed any, it depends. Some schools are really good, some schools are not. Maybe some schools are very supportive of a particular language group, and maybe they don't have any support for any of the others. So this is just one of the more institutional barriers that even in the education system, which I think we like to think of is a welcoming system, that's not always the case. Going to a totally different angle, I think another challenge that I'd like to highlight is really the family stress. So there's academic stress of having to catch up. For many of our students, they have had their education interrupted. For maybe it's just for a month or two, maybe it's for years, maybe it's been multiple short-term interruptions. Maybe they've been in school in many different countries and therefore been a language learner of that country's language several times over. There's many, many different scenarios. And so that is obviously a particular challenge to catch up, to learn the language and be ready to graduate on time, pass the regents, and then be able to be in a college environment and write at an academically rigorous level. These are all challenges that are not, that maybe we might think of more readily. But family stress is another one that I think is important to understand and to highlight because that impacts also on one's education and one's, how one thinks about the future. Many of our families, for many of our refugee families, they actually arrive intact, or at least sort of intact, with most members of the family being together. Our asylee families often face a different situation where one family member has made it, has applied for their asylum status. That asylum status was granted after potentially many years. And then they've now applied for their children to come meet them, who may be many years older than they were when they left. And that's a new relationship to have to build. That parent may need to learn how to be a parent again, or may need to learn how to integrate the family. And that maybe one of the children had a lot of responsibilities and really sees themselves as more of an authority figure than that parent is going to see them because they were a small child when they left. So there's a lot of family issues that can come up, and as children learn English really quickly, maybe quicker than sometimes than their parents, then there becomes some power dynamics that can play out as, for example, when the school system is not providing interpretation or translated materials, and then a child is able to, provide their parents the information they want, not necessarily what the school may have been trying to communicate. So all of these things, and the reason for this sort of messy slide is that I think this is messy, the process of arriving to a new country and trying to begin a life. And I've made the issue of time, I think, just slightly larger than some of the others because it's a key facet. For me, it's something that I understand may be different for everyone, but for many students, it takes a very long time to become proficient in another language. And for a student who arrives in high school and has has 4 years or 5 years to learn the language, catch up, pass all the tests, and figure it all out. It's a lot of pressure. They may also need to work. They have many of all of these other issues they will face in a variety of ways. But I think another point I want to make is that the experience for each individual, it's different, and it may have many similarities to others, and it may not. I think, in this diverse city that we live in, the diversity doesn't stop within this group of young people. The experience is also as diverse as it is similar. So I would not want to, prescribe any type of, one experience for any student. Any questions about challenges? I jumped all over the place, kind of for a reason, that there are many, many issues, and I could probably stay here and talk about them for the rest of the afternoon. But I think I wanted to give you a taste and then also move on to talk about what we do and how we support students through this process. So our tagline at IRC is "From Surviving to Thriving," and that's the way I want to think about our work, is that it doesn't necessarily stop once a family has gotten here and they're in school and they're attending every day and their parents have a job. Thriving is more about what does that family want for themselves and how can we support them to get there. A few years ago we had an outside agency do an evaluation in which we did a survey of our alumni when we reached out and asked them all kinds of questions about where they are now, what they thought of our services, and for them, we asked them, what does thriving mean to them? And because we wanted to make sure that the goals that we're pursuing are in alignment with their goals. And overwhelmingly, they said that they got their education, they were pursuing a career of their choosing, that they felt stable enough where they were able to give back to their community. And that was really powerful for me. Because I think those are very much in alignment with what we are trying to work for our students and with our students. It's really important that we are in alignment. But the part about being able to give back and be a contributing community member, I think was the most powerful. That it wasn't enough for students to feel like they were successful in their own right, but that they were a member of the community here and able to contribute in different ways. So the department that I run it is called Education and Learning, and we are focused around education. We're based in education, but we're really at the intersection of many fields of work, from social work to psychology and mental health, to with links to many different outside agencies and partners working in a variety of fields. But our focus really is on helping students get the education to pursue the goals that they have for themselves. And we do this in a way that recognizes the individual, the family, and the community. That student is not in a vacuum by themselves. We can't just give them like thing A, thing B, and thing C, and that's it. But really trying to look at the situation and work holistically, work with the student, work with the family, and also be a partner to the school and other groups that they may be working with. And we take a very asset-based approach, actually not focusing on all of the challenges that I described and the many others that I didn't describe. Our students come with many assets, and the list here is from staff, an assessment that we have to do as part of service planning, where we really ask staff to think about what are the assets that are going to help in our work with this student. What are they bringing? And many of our students, this is certainly not a list that every single thing applies to every single person. Assets are something we all have that help us, and we all kind of have a different set. but these are really common. Our students are often from really supportive families or may have really close relationships with certain individuals in their family. They can usually very diligent, intelligent, curious, highly motivated, have a strong desire to be part of the U.S. community, are really eager to learn English, are willing to ask for help, have really high expectations for themselves, and often have really strong social skills, among others. This is just a list. And the way that we support students to build those assets in others is through a comprehensive and coordinated set of programs. The one that you're going to see a video in just a moment about a program that helps students orient to school in New York City. It's basically mock school for 6 weeks over the summer with a lot of extra supports and a lot more staff than you would normally have in your classroom. We provide what I've listed as adjustment and empowerment support, so working with students to get enrolled into school, and then working with students during their first year at least in the country, and helping their parents understand how to navigate the school system and become advocates for their children's education and feel confident in doing that. We provide a Saturday program where everyone who is a member of our community can come for tutoring. We do like community building activities. And then we provide some college readiness, work readiness, and leadership development. The reason that this is seen, I like to describe it as a continuum, is because it doesn't necessarily have to stop. It's not, all of the programs are voluntary. Families can engage in the ones that they feel that they need and not take up the ones that they don't. But they can come back until they've become citizens, if need be. And what we try to do is really create a community within the IRC, that the IRC fosters and encourages, so that our students feel comfortable and feel that they belong to this community in particular. And so I think I've talked for long enough, and I'm going to show you a video about our Refugee Youth Summer Academy, the 6-week program that prepares newly arrived students for school.
We're going to do the question of the day.
I'm from Karachi, Pakistan. I'm nervous because I'm in front of class. Everyone look at my face. I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to be afraid.
Today, people have take chances, okay? It's hard, I know, but this is the way you learn English every day. Speak a little bit and challenge yourself. So to be ready in September for school, you need to analyze literature.
These kids are in a really precarious situation. Things could go one of many different ways. What we're really trying to do is create a mock school and help kids understand what are the expectations that are going to be put on them in September.
In your language, I want you to translate these words.
All of the students have 3 academic classes each day, English and math for most of the students in the morning, and then social studies in the afternoon.
We go over everything from raising your hand and making eye contact to talking about the Civil War.
If Rice's Summer Academy didn't exist, there would be at least 7 children that I teach right now that would have no idea what's going on. And they're so nervous, so very quiet. the silent phase happens for a long time, and people will then assume, well, the student is just shy. The situation in Pakistan became very dangerous, and it was at a point where their mom was concerned that one day they could very well go to school and not come home.
In Pakistan, our life was really fearful. Every day there's bomb blasting. Hundreds of people are killed.
My sisters sleep here and my mom sleep there. That's my bed. It looks like tiny, but not too much. But it's like it's gonna get bigger. My big brother sleep here, and my second brother sleep here.
No, they just sleep in
Yeah, I have the best bed. It's so relaxing.
कि मैं कुछ सब कुछ वो उनके लिए नहीं कर सकती, उनको नहीं लेके जा सकती।
Thank you.
मैं जॉब करती हूँ, तो ये हमारे लिए रईसा चांस है, उनके लिए अपॉर्चुनिटी बहुत अच्छी है।
That's what I like to follow you. My favorite song is Michael Jackson's Blue Jeans. I like his dance, I like his voice, I like his moonwalk. I can dance alone from my sister, when she like friend with me. I can tell her about my secrets.
They fled war-torn villages, and all they know is this history of oppression. They're coming here to start new. So we want to make sure that none of our kids are going to fall through the cracks.
Here we go, little music. So images that we saw or things we heard, say, what did that check out for you? Yes, what does this word mean, student, to you guys? That's a really works in this room, okay? So, since I made it here, I can make it anywhere. What is he saying? You can make your dreams come true. Nice. You can success anything, success anything.
New York represents such a diverse group of people. I think it's probably one of the most welcoming environments.
This building is crucial to the government. I'm wearing American
Success comes in the form of the children's joy and their ability to open up in some way. Because I know that so many of these students have gone through some very traumatic experiences in their lives. They've come a long way in these 5 weeks.
The talent show is the best day of the year. All of our kids get up in front of their entire community, hear the roar of applause, and have that sense of pride. That's something hugely empowering for students.
I clean my wrist. I'm gonna dance like a bunch of people. front of a bunch of people, and like how to school me. I'm prepared to do it. I'm gonna do it. Every day I'm excited to come here. Like, hurry. I'm gonna 7 a.m. I wanna be here. That's why I'm excited. I have like friends, my teachers, and fun. I don't want to leave.
Zane has really blossomed. He's definitely opened up a lot with the other children, sharing with them his Zane wisdom.
I hope that all of our students hold on to their experiences here at RISA and let it carry you through September and on to the future. Whenever you feel nervous or afraid, remember the community you have built here and know that each and every one of us here are rooting for you. We have your back.
I have to like study a lot to improve my English a lot. I'm only learning English. That's why I'm talking to you. If I don't like, I can't talk to you. Thank you. You are too.
Do you want the lights back on? No? It's comfortable and nice like this. So that was just a short glimpse into the Refugee Summer Academy, which is really one of our strongest and oldest programs. Our youth programs in New York were founded around 1999, and it was at the time when there was an influx of young people from the former Yugoslav countries that were in New York, and all of a sudden it just seemed apparent that there were youth programming that was needed. And this program was one of the first, and it operated primarily with volunteers until 2006. And then after 2006, the IRC got some federal funding that allowed it to really scale up the programs and hire permanent staff. And we've been able to sustain it even after that program, even after that funding stream ended, to be the core set of programs that we know today. And this program is run with a very small team. We have 3 of us who are permanent staff members. And we hire around 20 or 25 people as paid staff, and then we have probably 50 or 60 volunteers. And this includes teachers from the New York City Department of Education, specifically teachers that work with English language learners during the school year and have those skill sets and really utilize best practices. And we have this model where there are lead teachers, there are assistant teachers, and then there are peer mentors. We have at least 10 students who are alumni of the Academy that work in the classrooms with students as peer mentors. And they're part of our leadership group that we can offer paid jobs to them for the summer. And as much as possible, we try to recruit our alumni as well to either come back as peer mentors or assistant teachers. And we've been fortunate that every single year we've been able to have alumni of the program come back, which to us means that they value the program and they think it made a difference to them, so much so that they want to come back and be a part of it. we look at, this is a 6-week program for around 100 to 130 students, going from really pre-K, kindergarten, all the way up to students who may be entering high school, but may also be entering a GED or high school equivalency program, or maybe are going to go to community college, or go away, but have yet to have an experience in any American classroom. And if we can give them that, then we will try to do that. And we think about this in terms of what we call school readiness, which could mean a lot of things, but we think about it in what we can do with our expertise and with our staff's expertise in 6 weeks in a public school building in New York City. We want to give them as rigorous an experience to what academics are going to be like in their classrooms, but also we understand that in 6 weeks, people are going to make actually astounding progress in terms of language and learning content knowledge. But maybe more important for us are what are maybe softer skills, things that aren't quite as tangible, but making sure that our students really understand what are the rules, the routines, the expectations of the American school system in New York City in particular. What's that going to be like? So they don't have to figure that out during the first several weeks, like just what's going on around me. What are the expectations? What do people expect me to do in this situation? We want that to be like, that's checked off already. We also think a lot about students' attitude towards school and their motivation to achieve, and we want to give them, they come to us with really positive attitudes and really high motivation, but there are a lot of challenges that they're going to face in the course of their academic career, and so we want to give an experience of success early on and recognize that success. We don't know, our students are going to be in schools, across the city, from the Bronx to Staten Island, Queens, Brooklyn, everywhere, and their schools are going to be different environments. We want them to have an experience of success with us that they can take forward with them. That this also includes looking at building their self-confidence so that they raise their hand in the first week and not wait 3 months, because we believe that participation early on is really important. What did I cover? We also talk about coping skills for when it gets really tough, or when you've got frustrations that you need to figure out how to manage, so that they don't get you in trouble in your particular school environment. How do you manage that? And so we work a lot on that, especially in translating what disciplinary expectations are in the school system, and how do you navigate situations where either you're overly frustrated, or get into a fight, or either that, or like really, really positive feelings that you have to figure out how to manage. So these are really a lot of the themes that we incorporate into our classrooms. So as they said, there are academic classes primarily in the morning, and in the afternoon we work with an arts partner called A-Step, and they bring teaching artists. So we'll have storytelling and dance and music, and it varies a little bit each year, but arts classes will do physical education, may do some college and career readiness, or nutrition, other sort of elective classes, and there will be some actual electives where students can choose. The staff decides, this one teaches yoga on the side, and somebody else wants to lead debate club, and we have a set of elective classes that students can opt into during the day. This is just a few pictures from some of our events we hold. Every week we hold a community building event, and they sort of build. The first week is really, there's very little risk involved. You're not putting yourself out there necessarily in front of all your classmates yet. There'll be activities like, silly activities, 3-legged races, and different kind of, we've had it the past couple years be Olympics. So we've got the classes competing against each other in different things. But it's really just about getting everyone to participate. But as we move through the weeks, the activities that we do involve a little bit more putting yourself out there. So that's when we get to, we'll do, one of the photos up there is from our International Food and Fashion Show, where everyone, if they can dress as they want to showcase their pride and their heritage, and brings in food to share with everyone. And if they want to participate in a bit of a fashion show, they get to do that in front of all of their peers. And then we move on to the talent show, where every year students who were not saying one word from the beginning of the week end up singing and dancing in front of their peers by the end. That year in particular was a pretty epic talent show, I must say. And not to toot our own horn, but we have been able to demonstrate that the model is effective in generating these changes in what we like to call school readiness. And so we feel pretty confident that it's a model that's really worth investing in. It's worth keeping it going, and it's worth sharing about it so that other cities might be able to do something very similar. There's a lot of things that I haven't talked about with regard to the Academy, and I'm happy to answer questions. I also like to just share that we have a growing group of students who are now alumni of the program who from what I can, it's very hard to keep track of people, especially when they don't take their own name on Facebook, for example. I can't find them. But of the students that we're able to track, which is around 40 to 50% of the students that we work with, and we work with around 250 to 300 students per year, and we're able to follow up and find about the graduation of about 50% of them, and I'm working to make that a higher percentage, but about 90% or more are graduating high school. And most of those are enrolling in post-secondary education. So I think that to me, that is what we're hoping for. And many of our students now, since I've been around for almost 9 years, now these students are going to college, they're graduating college, they're getting married, and making me feel really old. But and many of them are going back into professions that are related to the work that we've done, and coming back to us and becoming not either advocates. I had a student reach out to me yesterday to tell me about his experience being on the Refugee Congress, which recently met in Washington, D.C., and now he's volunteering as an advocate with others. And I know of another student who has recently graduated from college and is working in public health and applying to get his public health degree. And the story, I can just go on and on and on about the stories of our alumni and how they're becoming amazing contributors to our community. So with that, I think it's time to leave it open for questions. Yeah.
So I think we have mics set up here, so if anyone wants to come and ask a question, we'd really welcome you to do so. I think we're coming at this from a really interesting perspective. Actually, can you just get the conversation going? We're here now at community college. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
So what can we, do as either educators or as peers of people who are coming at programs like this to facilitate these kinds of transitions that you're talking about?
So you can tell them to call us, for one. Referrals. No, but seriously, if we actually, the majority of the way that we, that we work with, especially refugees that we're picking up at the airport, of course, then we meet them immediately, but by word of mouth is one of the strongest ways that actually there will be someone who shows up and their child arrived yesterday and are asking us for school enrollment assistance because their cousin came through IRC or something like that. So I think it's being a connector to support. Probably people are doing that already, but I think as much as possible to connect people to support, that's going to make that transition easier. Or be that support yourself. If you've gone through that experience, or you know someone who's gone through that experience, I think that building community and building connections is really powerful. Probably every one of us can identify some person or connection that was made for us that was kind of game-changing, and it opened a door to an opportunity that we don't know if we would have found it otherwise. In terms of getting involved, I mean, you can apply to work in our summer academy. We start opening applications in January for our peer mentor positions, and which are typically college students who maybe are interested in education, are interested in refugee issues, but I would say it's best for someone who's definitely interested in education or maybe social work, because it is hands-on. It's pretty intense, actually, in terms of 6 weeks of really hard work. But it's a great foundation for someone who does want to go into a related field, to have that under your belt. And we've had a number of students who've been able to apply for, if their colleges have internship funds, have been able to get funding to come and work with us. So that's a nice opportunity and a nice connection to make with colleges and universities. If you want to be supportive of the type of programming that we do, you can certainly write to your elected officials and say that you value them. I was reading some guidance on how to do that and what's most effective. It sounds like phone calls are actually the most effective, and they get answered, as opposed to emails that will get read, and letters will definitely get read, but phone calls followed by letters, followed by emails, are actually more effective than you might think that they are. Those are all some great steps, I think, to be involved.
Sarah, what's the website so I can write it on there for the application they can look for?
If you go to, it's www.rescue.org is our organization. If you just Google International Rescue Committee, you will definitely find it. And you got to go under the careers. I'm going to say that our website is not the easiest to navigate or the best in terms of finding information. But we post all of our positions throughout the year and on the IRC website. They'll also get picked up by like Idealist, or I'll post sometimes to Idealist, but also Indeed and other sites like that. Are there any other questions? Yeah?
Do the students that that apply for this program, do they already have asylum or refugee status, or are some of them in the process of going through?
Some of them are in the process. So in our office, we have a variety of different programs that are, because of what they're funded by, either have restrictions on who's eligible for them or they don't. I've been unfortunate and fortunate. In the time that I've worked at IRC, we used to have funding that came from the federal government that was given down to the states, and then the states, was called the Refugee School Impact Grant, and it was given, the states could then give it out as they saw fit for programs like ours. In 2011, we found out at the last minute that wasn't going to be renewed in New York City because there were higher numbers of refugees being resettled in different parts of New York State other than the city, and what wasn't being counted were the numbers of asylees who were eligible to participate in programs, but the state hasn't been a way to count numbers of people receiving asylum or asylees in a given area to be able to justify funding. It's something that the state is actually trying to change, but it wasn't counted. So at that point in time, we did a lot of emergency fundraising, and now, since then, we've been almost entirely privately funded, which that means the bonus is that we can serve whoever we want. And so we've loosened those. You do not necessarily need to have refugee status or need to be an asylee. We serve immigrants of a variety of statuses, and we make a determination based on is the programming that we're offering a good fit for the student. And If it's not, then we'll help make a referral to an organization that does. The majority of our students are refugees or asylees. Maybe their asylum is pending or they're unaccompanied. But we're fortunate in the programs that I run that we don't have really strict eligibility criteria that we have to adhere to. Hi.
So what I love about the academy is that
Can you guys hear me? I can hear you. Oh, there's one behind you.
I'm hoping people can hear me without it. Can you? Okay. So I love that you reject this whole deficit-based approach to students. You don't look at what they don't have and what they're not able to do. You look at the assets. And I wonder if you know what the experience is for the students who then enter the public school system and whether they are welcomed with a similar approach or a different approach. And if it is different, how are the students coping with it? Or do you actually prepare them for coping with, perhaps a different approach to what they bring with them?
Absolutely. So I can say that the experience is varied for students because the New York City school system is so vast. I will say that we work really closely with the Internationals Network for Public Schools, which are public schools that serve only English language learners who've arrived to the country in the last 4 years, I think prior to enrollment there, except for a few who also serve long-term English language learners. But these schools it's something that if you don't have an advocate with you and you go to a family welcome center to do school enrollment, you may or may not get told that this is an option. But a number of these schools have really high graduation rates and they are really supportive environments. Of course, within that network, which I think is around 14 or 15 high schools in the city, that things vary too. We have probably our largest group of students have attended Brooklyn International High School, which is, has graduation rates for newly arrived English language learners that are more than double the citywide average. That is, to me, if I can provide that information to a family, and you don't have to live nearby in Brooklyn. We have students come, obviously, if it's going to be a 2-hour commute, there might be a better option somewhere else. But we have students that will attend from all the boroughs. And I think that, being able to provide that information is one step. And those environments are really supportive. They operate in teams. So that they're not, all of the teachers who are on that team are working with all of the students, which I think is a great model. But not all schools are going to be like that, and obviously you have more choice or less choice. Enrolling at different, as an elementary student or a middle school student, you have less choice about where you can go. And what we do, the program that we do that we call academic coaching is work with families so help parents to understand their rights and their expectations. Things as simple as how to request interpretation for a parent-teacher conference and what type of questions to ask. What can you expect the school to be able to tell you? Or how to navigate different processes to get the support that students need. If a student needs an individualized education plan, or if they want to go to a bilingual program, but the school doesn't have one, and they have a right to do that. So helping arm parents with information and how to make that transition, but also working with the schools as much as possible. We try to position ourselves not only as an advocate, because sometimes it's hard the boundary between advocate and adversary is tough to negotiate, but students are going to be in that school probably for several years. So we want there to be a positive relationship, and so we try to position ourselves also as a resource to the school to help them understand that what they may see as the parent being totally unresponsive that's not necessarily the case, and how can we broker that relationship a little bit or support the school to understand what's happening, support the parents to communicate. And we'll do, so that program is as much about supporting students in their transition to school as it is about supporting the parents in that process and supporting the school, and trying to help everyone take an asset-based approach. I'm sorry? Any other questions?
I have a question actually. Are there programs like RISA in other cities in the U.S. or is it exclusively in New York? And are there other cities where the number of refugees coming parallels that of New York?
New York is actually on the lower end in terms of resettlement numbers, but New York City is such a hub that we serve this really high population of asylees, especially, and that's different between the other cities. I mean, there are other cities in the U.S. That are also serving higher numbers of asylees, but New York is pretty unique in that way. But some of our offices are resettling up to 1,000 people in their offices, and there are cities that have multiple, we also in New York have more than one refugee resettlement agency, and in other cities, there are much higher numbers. To my knowledge, there's no other RISA, like exactly the same. There are other summer programs. There are summer programs that build on some of what we do. We have a sub-office in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and they implemented a shorter program based kind of along these principles, but adapted to their context. So there are other programs that are sort of similar, but not the same thing. And in other cities too, in other school systems around the country, there are different opportunities. There are some school systems that have newcomer programs, and there are others that are actually like a year long, or there are a few weeks that are more institutionalized at the city level, for example. And there's lots of debate about what type of program is the best, but nothing exactly the same. Any other last questions? Oh.
Do students already have to be pre-exposed to like a language like English, or do they just not know any word and then come into the program and learn?
Yeah, we have students that arrive to the country during the course of the program, and if there's any program left, we'll enroll them, with the idea that whatever exposure we can provide and whatever orientation we can provide, that's valuable to the experience. So we have students that have absolutely no English whatsoever, to students that actually have quite a solid command of English, and really everything in between. So it's actually a very good professional development opportunity for teachers, because your classroom will be more diverse, or as diverse, if not more so, than any other classroom that you will teach in, because of the language diversity, because of the prior educational history, and we're serving students most years, I would say 15 to 30 different countries. So the prior knowledge and educational experience that is in your classroom is really varied. So it's definitely a learning opportunity especially for our assistant teachers who want to become teachers, or maybe want to build their skills working with English language learners, and they can learn from the lead teachers and really get a lot of heavy experience.
It's not really a question, but more of a reflection. I love Zane's story, and I felt like I was just taken back to when I was 11, and I came to America and I was like so terrified, but I was also really hopeful, and I'm getting all weepy. So I'm pretty sure, just from the students that I teach, there is that connection, right? Like this insecurity, this fear, but also this just hope that you feel. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's really nice to see that and to have that documented, and for us to kind of make that connection, because we could see the PowerPoints and stuff, but there's nothing like the narrative being told, especially from his perspective. And it was really inspiring, and I hope wherever he is, he's doing all right. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. There's one quote I have. I stuck some random slides at the end of this, and pardon my capitalization typo, but we have, I think that sense of community and belonging and encouragement of that, of hope and of possibility is something that we really try to drive it home. And I think that that's if there's one thing, I mean, students will come back and say, you know, when asked about what's the most memorable program that they participated with us, it's split between the Summer Academy and our Leaders in Training program. But that they gained a lot of self-confidence to really step out there, but that also they gained that sense of belonging. And to me, like, that's one of the most important things. If they go into a school where there's no other student who speaks their language, that they have a community at IRC that they can come back to and receive support and be a part of it, be a valued member of that community. So I'm happy that's the reflection. And yeah, I guess are there any more questions or reflections or comments? I don't need just questions. I'm happy to take feedback too.
Do you have any updates on Zane?
Zane's in school. Yeah. He's I think he's had some ups and downs. I think anyone does. But he came back to RISA this summer. We like people to come back twice. 3 times, we can take students 3 times if we think it's the right thing. But a lot of times parents will come back or students will come back and want to come back a 3rd time, and we're like, nah, it's not, you gotta move on. You don't need us anymore. But there is that like sense of community that is there that people stay connected to. So yeah, he's doing pretty well. I think he's encountering, his challenges, as is his older brother, who is also in the video, passed the task with a perfect score, and has started college this year. And the other brother that you saw is now part of our leadership group and is in high school. And his sister is not. I think she's got another year before she can apply for that. So yeah, you're doing well. Well, if there's no more reflections or comments, I want to again thank the Kupferberg Center and the organizers for having me and letting me share about this program. I'll hang around for a little bit in case there's anybody who wants to ask a question they didn't feel like, or give me a reflection or comment or piece of feedback that they didn't want to share with everyone. But I wish you guys a wonderful afternoon, and thanks so much.
Thank you so very much.